The pillow was never invented for comfort. It was invented to keep you alive. For most of human history, sleep was dangerous. Not because of dreams, because of what moved in the dark. The ground was alive. Ants, beetles, ticks, spiders, things drawn to the warmth of a sleeping face. A mouth left open on the earth was an invitation. The ears were open doors, so were the nostrils. To sleep on the ground was to surrender the most vulnerable part of the body to the night. Consider what an open mouth means to an insect. Warmth, moisture, carbon dioxide on every breath. To a crawling thing, a sleeping human lying on the bare earth is a landscape, a place to feed, a place to hide. And in the ancient world, insects were not a nuisance. They were a danger. They carried disease. A bite in the night could bring fever, sickness, sometimes death. The stakes of sleep were real. There was no medicine to undo the damage. The only defense was to keep the threat away in the first place. So humans did something strange. They lifted the head off the earth. That single act changed everything. It seems small, a few inches of elevation, but those inches were the line between safety and harm. This is not a story about softness. It is a story about defense, about survival, about the human head. And it begins long before cities, long before writing, long before anything we would call civilization. To understand the pillow, we have to go back further than most objects can take us. 200 millennia. Deep inside a cave in South Africa, archaeologists found a bed. It was 200,000 years old. The site is called Border Cave. It sits high in the Lebombo Mountains, near the edge of the country. The cave is a deep gash in a cliff face, sheltered, dry. Occupied by humans across 200 millennia, there, buried in ancient sediment, researchers found layers of compressed grass, broad-leaved grasses, guinea grass, red grass. This was not an accident of nature. Someone gathered it, someone chose it, someone built with it. The layer was thick, by one estimate, a foot deep. As comfortable, the lead researcher said, as any camp bed. But comfort was not the point. Beneath the grass, they found something far more revealing. Ash. The ash was not random. It came from the beds themselves, burned and rebuilt again and again. The people cleared old bedding by burning it. Then they laid fresh grass on the ash below. And the ash did something the sleepers understood. It stopped insects from crawling into the bed. Ash clogs the breathing and biting parts of small insects. It dries them out. It kills them. Some of the burned wood came from the camphor bush, a plant still used in East Africa to repel insects. Think about what that means. 200,000 years ago, humans chose specific plants for their chemistry. They were not simply sleeping. They were engineering a space, defending it against the things that bite. The bedding itself was ordinary. What surrounds it is not. Stone tools, fragments of burned bone. People ate where they slept, they worked where they rested, and they guarded that ground with fire and ash. This is the oldest known bedding on Earth, and its defining feature is protection, not padding. The researchers used electron microscopes to identify the grass, infrared analysis to read the ash. What emerged was a picture of deliberate care, of planning, of knowledge passed down through generations. These early humans understood their environment. They knew which plants killed pests and which did not. That knowledge is a form of medicine, a pharmacology written not in books, but in the beds people slept on. For years, an older site held a similar secret, a rock shelter called Sibudu, also in South Africa. There, humans built thick mattresses of sedge, rushes, and grass, at least 15 stacked layers. The bedding sat in sediment nearly 10 feet deep, 77,000 years of accumulated rest, and on top of the grass, the sleepers laid leaves. Leaves from the river wild quince tree, crushed, Those leaves release a scent that repels mosquitoes and other biting insects. That tree still grows in the region. Local people still use its leaves for the very same purpose. So across tens of thousands of years, the pattern holds. Gather bedding. Add a natural repellent. Sleep protected. The archaeologists found something else in those layers. Stone tools and tiny flakes scattered through the beds. People sat on the bedding while they worked. They lived on it, and they defended it against pests with plants. The choice of that particular tree was not luck. It shows an intimate knowledge of the local plants. These people knew their world in detail. Which leaves soothed, which leaves healed, which leaves drove insects away. That is the same instinct we saw at Border Cave. Across 100,000 years, the logic never changed. Sleep meant lying still and defenseless for hours. And so sleep had to be made safe before it could be enjoyed. Every clue points in the same direction. Early sleep was not a search for comfort. It was a defense against a threat. Now move forward, across a vast stretch of time, cross continents, arrive in the land between two rivers, Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, centered in what is now Iraq, around 7,000 years before Christ. Here, in the written and archaeological record, the first true pillow appears, and it was made of stone, not soft, not warm, a slab of stone, carved into the curve of a cradle for the human skull. Imagine resting your head on a rock every night. It sounds like punishment. It was protection. The purpose was blunt and practical. Raise the head. Keep insects out of the mouth, the nose, and the ears. Remember, people still slept close to the ground, and the ground still crawled with life. A stone pillow lifted the most vulnerable openings of the body above the reach of the night. But stone was costly. Carving it took labor and skill, so the stone pillow became a luxury. Only the wealthy could afford one. Only the powerful could afford to sleep with their heads raised and safe. And the wealthy turned that safety into a symbol. The more pillows you owned, the more important you were. A pillow was not a bedroom object. It was a statement, proof that you had risen above the dirt. To sleep with your head elevated was to announce a truth. Those crawling things were someone else's problem. Comfort had nothing to do with it. The stone was hard. The message was the point. Something is telling in this. Safety itself became a luxury good, a thing to be displayed. To own many pillows was to own many nights of protected sleep, and that was worth showing off. In later centuries, Mesopotamians softened the idea. They filled coverings with wool, feathers, and straw. Some were carved with images, geometric patterns, the shapes of animals, symbols of protection and status. Some were scented with herbs, believed to carry healing power. But the origin was defense, not delight. The stone came first. The comfort came after. That order matters more than anything else in this story. The idea traveled. It reached the banks of the Nile, and there it took on a deeper meaning. In ancient Egypt, the head was sacred. It was believed to be the seat of life itself, the essence of a person. Egyptian pillows were headrests, curved supports carved from wood, stone, alabaster, ivory, and ceramic. They cradled the neck and held the skull clear of the surface. Elegant, hard, deliberate. The earliest are associated with the 11th dynasty, roughly 2,000 years before Christ. 4,000 years ago, they were often narrow, just wide enough to hold the head, shaped to cradle the neck in sleep. Some were plain, others were exquisite, carved from ivory or fine wood for the wealthiest of the dead. Most of what we know comes from tombs. The headrests were placed beneath the heads of the dead. Sleep and death were closely linked in the Egyptian mind. Both were thresholds. Both needed protection. The Egyptian word for headrest was tied to their word for dream. To rest the head was to cross a boundary. A headrest under a mummy served no comfort. The dead feel nothing. It served as protection. It guarded the head against decay, against evil spirits, against the loss of the vital essence of life. Some headrests were carved with the images of gods, guardians standing watch over the sleeper and the dead alike. Religious texts spoke of raising the head, of keeping it high, even in the afterlife. Once again, the object is not about softness, it is about defending the most sacred part of the body. Some believed the raised head improved the flow of life through the body, that it preserved vigor even in death. A headrest was practical too. In a hot climate, keeping the head off the ground allowed air to circulate. It kept insects away from the face. It protected elaborate hairstyles. It served the living and the dead at once. Two purposes, one object. Comfort was never the reason. Protection, in this world and the next, always was. Notice the pattern forming across every culture. The pillow begins as a shield, never as a cushion. It lifts the head above threat. It repels the crawling dark. It protects what people believe to be sacred. Travel east, and the same truth appears in a different form. In ancient China, pillows were often ceramic, hard, glazed, cool to the touch, nothing at all like the soft object we imagine today. During the Tang and Song dynasties, ceramic pillows reached their height, painted, ornate, beautiful. Craftsmen decorated them with butterflies, flowers, and children at play. Images meant to bring good fortune. They were works of art, prized possessions, and still, they were hard as the stone of Mesopotamia. They kept the head raised and the sleeper cool through long, humid nights, a defense against heat and pests. In a warm climate, a cool head meant better sleep. The ceramic pillow drew heat away from the skin. Others were carved from bamboo, woven to let air pass through. Cooling, practical, still not soft. In Japan, women slept on raised wooden stands, not for comfort, to preserve elaborate hairstyles for days. To lie on a soft pillow would ruin the hair, so they chose the hard stand and the discomfort that came with it. Function ruled the object everywhere, never the softness we now demand from it, without a second thought. Across the world, the same story appears. Stone, wood, ceramic, bamboo, all of them hard, all of them purposeful. Different cultures, different beliefs, different centuries, and yet the same underlying truth in every one. The pillow raised the head. It kept the sleeper safe. It served a purpose far older than comfort. The move toward softness came late in the story, and it came from the Mediterranean. The Greeks and the Romans mastered the stuffed pillow. They filled the cloth with reeds, feathers, and straw. For the first time, the pillow leaned toward rest, toward pleasure, toward sinking into something gentle. Even so, it remained a marker of wealth. The finest were stuffed with soft down. The poor made do with straw. The Romans slept on layered cushions. They propped themselves on pillows even while they dined. They stuffed the finest with the down of geese, the soft breast feathers, prized above all other fillings. A pillow of down was a sign of luxury. A pillow of straw was the lot of the common household. But softness was a privilege. The comfort we take for granted was, for most people, still out of reach. For centuries after Rome, the hard pillow endured across much of the world. Comfort stayed rare and expensive. For thousands of years, across every great civilization, the pillow resisted becoming comfortable. It was a stone in Mesopotamia, wood in Egypt, ceramic in China, ash beneath grass in a South African cave. The soft pillow we know is astonishingly recent. It arrived with machines, with the Industrial Revolution. Textile mills spun cheap fabric at enormous scale. New fillings became affordable for ordinary families. The familiar rectangular shape emerged, mass-produced, standardized, available to nearly everyone. For the first time in history, an ordinary family could own a soft pillow. And then, several of them. The thing that had signaled wealth for 9,000 years became common, cheap, taken for granted. Only then did the pillow finally become what we assume it always was, a thing made purely for comfort. That transformation is barely 2 centuries old, a blink against the span of human history. Before that, softness belonged to the rich. After it, softness belonged to everyone. The pillow finally shed its ancient purpose. It stopped being a shield, it became a cushion. But the shield came first. For thousands upon thousands of years, the pillow protected before it comforted. So here is the illusion we live with. We believe the pillow was always about softness. It was not. Comfort was the final chapter, not the first. For almost all of human existence, the pillow did other work. It had one enduring job: to keep the sleeper safe, to lift the head above the reach of the night, safe from the insects that crawled toward a warm face in the dark, safe from decay, safe from the ground itself. Every stone cradle, every carved headrest, every layer of ash beneath ancient grass, all of it was defense. Think of the span of that history, from a South African cave to a factory in the 19th century. For all of it but the final sliver, the pillow guarded the sleeper. It never simply cushioned the head. We inherited the object and forgot its purpose. We kept the shape and lost the reason it was made. Somewhere along the way, the shield became a symbol of ease. The tool of survival became a simple token of rest. The pillow beneath your head tonight carries that inheritance. 200,000 years of quiet protection. It does not exist because sleep felt uncomfortable. It exists because sleep, for a very long time, was dangerous. There is a strange comfort in knowing this. The softest object in your home has the hardest history. It was carved from rock, buried with the dead, layered over ash to hold the darkness at bay. Rest your head, and you are performing an ancient act. The same act was performed in a cave before history began, lifting the most vulnerable part of yourself out of harm's way, trusting the dark because you are protected. The pillow was never about comfort. It was, and always has been, about survival.